So with this Madhyamaka view of things not having their own separate independent existence, but rather everything being kind of dependent on everything else, you mentioned that your initial interest was ecology. Do you see a parallel there? Because to me, it seems like, in the same way a flower doesn't exist as a flower without insects to kind of be attracted to the bright colors and carry the pollen. And suddenly you can see that it's an illusion to say that flowers have their own independent existence. There's only really a play of interdependent origination.
That's a very, very powerful parallel. And of course, it has occurred to me many times that among all the branches of the natural sciences, I think it's fair to say that ecology is the one that focuses most on interdependence. And that is, you can't take one species and treat it in isolation. You can't take the soil and treat it in isolation from the air. You can't take one continent. That is, if we look at the planet, from outer space, which we've all seen, you'll notice that there aren't any boundaries. There are oceans between land masses, but there's no boundary between England and Scotland, for example, or between Russia and the Ukraine. Those are all made up. And so from nature's side, there are no boundaries. And so ecology is really perhaps the most encompassing of all the branches of science, because it has to include physics. You can't leave that out. You can't leave out chemistry. That would be ridiculous. You can't leave out biology. That's right. Biology is right at the core. But then, all the other branches of knowledge that pertain to this globe. You could leave out the moon and sun. They probably don't have a whole lot of, you can't influence them. But yeah, it's focusing very much on interdependence. And the fact that, I'll just give one example. In Yellowstone National Park, in the Rocky Mountains in the United States, they killed off the wolves a long time ago. The ranchers, they didn't want them eating their sheep and their cattle. They wiped them all out. But then they decided, the biologists, the Forest Service, the National Park Service, decided to reintroduce wolves back into their natural habitat, because up in Canada, they hadn't been wiped out. And lo and behold, just by introducing some wolves into their native habitat in Yellowstone National Park, they found this had an impact on the streams, on elk, on many, many aspects, that one insertion then brought many other aspects of that natural habitat back into balance, right? And so likewise, if you poison one thing, if you wipe out one species or introduce one poison like DDT into the ecosphere, you're not just poisoning what you wanted to poison. That poison creeps out. And so it is really like a biological law of karma. And I'm not going metaphysical here or ooey gooey. I'm just saying that laws of karma are all about interdependence of the interrelationship between subjects and the objective world. And that's what ecology is about. That we human beings cannot regard ourselves as a unique, isolated, independent species, because we can't exist independent of the other species or the ecosphere. We're influenced by and we're influencing. And we can do so in very beneficial, benevolent ways. Or we can follow our current trajectory, which is a trajectory of self-destruction and destruction of the ecosphere.
And so you mentioned the fact that there are no kind of, there is no kind of objective boundary between Scotland and England or any other countries, and we kind of mentally impose these boundaries. One of the things I study in my scientific research is how the mind and the brain kind of creates these artificial boundaries, how consciousness gets divided up. How is it right now that I'm got a conceptual category that says that some certain things are your voice, certain things are my voice, and it structures consciousness in that way. But my interest in that came out of these kinds of states of awareness that are described in, especially well in Tibetan Buddhism, of the kind of the deep nature of consciousness, that it is fundamentally undivided, right, and non-conceptual.